Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Sean M., Jeff S., Andy J., and Paul M. On the program today is a returning guest and a new company to our podcast. Mr. Simon Ridgway is with us. Simon is the Chief Executive Officer of Rackla Metals. The company is a Canadian-focused gold exploration company with a number of projects in the Yukon and Northwest Territories focused along the Tombstone Gold Belt, including the Grad project in Western Northwest Territories. The company is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol RAK and also on the US OTC markets under the symbol RMETF. Simon, welcome back to Smith Weekly Discussions.
Well, thank you for the invite to come back, Andrew.
Simon, always good to have you on the program to get your thoughts and also talk about some of the companies that you're progressing on the exploration side and early stage development. Appreciate you coming back to talk with us. Well, you have been on the program before, but Rackla is new to our program. Before we get into Rackla, I'd like to have you give us your view on the current market conditions for exploration stage junior companies, Simon. You've obviously been in this sector a long time and you've seen these ups and downs. And then, of course, your outlook on sentiment for these smaller junior companies.
Yeah, I think we're in a bit of an unusual situation at the moment. Who could have dreamt we could have 2,700 gold and still the lack of interest in exploration plays. I mean, we've dreamt about this kind of price for years, and here we are. And yet, I mean, you can still raise money for exploration plays that are in exciting belts, but it is a tough market. There's still very little retail in interest or involvement in mineral exploration or gold exploration at the present time. I think that is slowly changing as we see some of these, big takeovers or money made by the funds on those transactions. I think some of that will start to filter down into the junior market. But it is quite at the present time quite unusual that we see this gold price and this lack of interest.
Quite a challenge out there for really. It's been difficult market conditions for a couple of years, but retail investors and there's more interest from the broad market coming into the commodity space and certainly into natural resources and then flowing into the junior markets. There's big disconnect for sure as far as we can see things. I mean, obviously you do have some company specific driven events and some good opportunities. There's always good opportunities out there.
Definitely.
But,
yeah.
Quite tough. Who would have guessed, as you said, who would have guessed that there still is no interest even where the gold price is today? And I do think that will certainly change, but you have other conditions in the broad market that are causing potential holdback of capital issues surrounding global economic conditions as well. So, of course, that's kind of overshadowing what we have going in the natural resource sector, which is quite positive in my opinion. But nonetheless, I don't think everybody shares my optimism here. But
well, I think it'll change over in the coming year. I guess the American elections right now are holding the bigger markets back, and if they do fail a little bit, we'll see that a bit of a gold sell-off. But that being so, I think we'll have a good year for the junior market next year. But I'm always optimistic. You have to be in this business, right? But so I'm optimistic that things will change early in the new year, and we will see some money flow into the junior market.
Yeah, I do think we'll see that as well, Simon, to some extent. So I appreciate your comments there and sharing some of your experience because you've been here for quite a while in the sector. Well, let's get into Rackla. To just kick it off here with Rackla, because it is new, give us a brief overview of the company, including, of course, the history of the company, and then we'll dive into a couple details.
Okay. Rackla, several years ago, was a spin-out from Radius. Radius had a number of properties in Mexico and Guatemala, and also some projects in the Yukon in what was known at the time as the Rackla Gold Belt. There was a discovery of Carlin-style mineralization up in the central Yukon. A company called Attack Resources started it, and they made some very interesting discoveries. Radius picked up some assets in that belt, and at some point it made more sense to spin it out into a new company that would focus up in the Yukon. That's when Rackla was formed. So the shareholders of Radius got shares in Rackla, and a new public company was spun out. Unfortunately, we joint ventured most of the properties off to Attack and other players in that belt, and those projects were drilled and really didn't work out. So Rackla sat as a bit of a shell in my office for a few years, and he still had an active company in the Yukon, but it was just watching developments up there. And then Snowline made a big discovery in the Tombstone Gold Belt, and I've got a bit of a history in the Tombstone Gold Belt. In fact, the first company I listed way back in 1991 was called Tombstone because it was working in those intrusive. Tombstone is a type of intrusive that sits in a belt within the Selwyn Basin that stretches from Alaska all the way across into the Northwest Territories. The western side of the belt around Dawson City, where I lived at the time in the early 90s, was known that these intrusives were known to be gold rich. And actually, since then, there's probably been about 25 million ounces discovered in these intrusives in that western part of the belt. But the eastern part of the belt was known to be base metal rich and gold poor. There's a couple of big, historically, some very large tungsten deposits within these intrusives and a very large lead zinc deposit way over on these are basically in the Northwest Territories and Yukon border on the eastern side of the belt. So when I saw Snowline's discovery, which is in the eastern part of this belt, and it's a very significant discovery, presently it's at about 7 million ounces, very attractive grade. And these deposits are always open pitable, simple metallurgy, so they're very attractive deposits when you find them. Snowline's discovery was quite significant. It was in the eastern part of the belt this is in 2022. I took a look at if it had created a bit of a gold rush, and it didn't, even though the market of Snowline went, is close to getting up close to $1 billion. Nobody really followed the play within the belt. So I took a look at all of this intrusive suite on the eastern side of the belt as it trends into the Northwest Territories, and I acquired a lot of ground in that area covering these intrusives. There was some reasonable geochem done by the government surveys that indicated some of these intrusives did have gold with them. So I staked a number of them and financed a company in 23. So Rackla got active working on that belt. We've been there now for 2 years. 23, we made some impressive starts, some good, very anomalous areas within the intrusives where we had a couple of good drill holes that returned broad intervals of low grade. I mean, half a gram, not economic, but indicating that we're in the right place, with the right location, and there's, chance to that get better at depth or around it. So 2023 was focused on those areas right along the Alaska-Yukon border. We had a camp that you could drive to at mile 222 on the North Canal Road. It's a 6 or 7 hour drive from Ross River, so quite remote, but we could drive to camp, and from there helicopter supported drilling. And then 23 we made those discoveries, and 24 we drilled a couple of them, and unfortunately they didn't work out. We put a bunch of holes in to try to expand that mineralization and hope it would trend into a better grade higher. It wasn't the case. The mineralization just petered out, and we didn't have a lot of success there. But about mid-year this year, 2024, some ground came open further south. It had been held in land, not land claims, but land planning for quite some years in the Northwest Territories. Land planning between the First Nations, Parks Canada, and the Northwest Territories. Government decided what to do with certain areas in the Nahanni River drainage area. There's a large park in there. Anyway, some of that land came open. We took a look at the geochemistry and went in and acquired the ground. We called the property, two properties, the Grad and the Yoga property. And I flew up there to be involved in the staking and to take a look at these intrusives. And I was very impressed by what I saw, the Grad especially. When you in this type of system, they form at the very top of these intrusive bodies come in, and at the very top it gets brittle and they form the carapace of the intrusive. All these veins can form, and deposit gold in that surface part of the intrusives. If we take a look at our website or the website of Snowline and see the kind of how these deposits form, it is quite interesting. Anyway, when we flew in there was lots of veining in the intrusive, so we increased the area that we were staking, and now after a month of working in the property, we were there. This was late in the season by the time we got it staked, and then we had a bit of a hold up. We had a bit of a helicopter accident. Helicopter crashed. Fortunately, nobody got hurt, but it did. It's rugged country, so we were very lucky in the fact that there were no injuries. But it did slow down the program for a few weeks. So by the time we're up and running again with the geos in the field, the season was getting to an end. So we've probably got about 12 to 15 man days on this property. We call the Grad, but it looks very exciting. Just to back up a little bit, RAK trades on the TSXV. It's got a market cap. The symbol is RAK. It has a market cap presently of about 10 to 12 million. We have about 3.6 million in the treasury, of which about 2.6 is flow through, or actually, 2.2 to 2.6 is flow through, and the balance is hard money. We have a significant program planned on the Grad for next year. It is an impressive find we've made, I believe. We've got a whole face of a cliff that is totally altered, lots of veining, and our sampling in the few days we spent on the property, our sampling is range from samples like 38 meters of 1.8 grams in a chip channel sample across the intrusive, up to with grab samples up to 95 grams gold in a grab. These systems are generally formed with bismuth and telluride and tungsten. It's a specific geochemical signature that makes for these. The systems are called reduced intrusive related gold systems. It's long. We call them rigs for short, but they specifically have gold associated with bismuth, telluride, tungsten, and a little arsenic. And the signatures we have on this Grad is very strong. We know all of those elements, including the gold.
Thank you for that. Appreciate the history and the overview there, and glad things are going well there on the ground. With respect to the capital structure, I want to come back into that in just a moment and talk a little bit more on the current financing and the cap structure. But can you back up for us for a moment and just talk generally about the Tombstone Gold Belt, some of the existing major deposits and mines in the region? Give us a flavor of what the scale is like, just to give more context of the area to our audience.
Right. So I would say the first one found in way back was Fort Knox in Alaska. Large intrusive body. I think to date they've mined about 7 or 8 million ounces from that deposit, and there is still quite a number of ounces left. They are, as I said earlier, bulk mineable, very simple metallurgy, generally sitting at surface. So they're very attractive deposits. Deposits in the western Yukon can be, Banyan's deposit is 7 million ounces plus and growing. Open pitable, probably at a grade of about 0.7, 0.8. Very good infrastructure where this deposit is. As I said, the Snowline discovery, which is in the eastern Yukon, is now at 7 million ounces and growing, and the grade on that is over 1.5. So it's higher grade. It's certainly more remote than the Banyan discovery. You need that extra grade where that's located, but that's what they're getting. And that deposit is growing as we speak. I mean, they're putting out some phenomenal drill results on that week after week. And there are several other deposits in the western Yukon in the 1 to 3 million ounce range. If you take a look at Sitka Gold, it is getting some very good drill results on their deposit in the Clear Creek area of Yukon Territory. So there's quite a number of them. Since I worked in the Yukon back in 1991, I would say about 20 million ounces plus has been found in the western Yukon in these deposits, these style of deposits.
With respect to the capital structure, Simon, you touched on that just a little bit here. Can you cover off for us the current shares outstanding at the company? You mentioned the cash on hand, but you do have a current financing that is going on. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that financing, and then what the plan is for that financing capital in the near term here. I'm assuming that'll be deployed at the project.
Yeah, well, we just announced the financing because one of the shareholders, a large shareholder, took a look at the Grad discovery on the presentation and then sent me an email, said he would like to increase his position from the 9.9% he had to 19%. So he wanted, we're trading at about 9 to 10 cents, and he requested if he could buy 10 million shares at 12 cents with no warrant. Of course, to have him involved is very good. And to get a financing that's 30% above market with no warrant attached is also very attractive. I couldn't turn that down. So Alex Gubbins, his name is Peruvian miner. So Alex is now at, I think, 18.8% of the company. And there's several other fairly large shareholders. Crescat, a U.S. brokerage house that has been a big supporter of investing in the Tombstone Gold Belt. They have around 15% of the company, myself, something similar. So with this investment, it's not, I didn't put the financing out there. It was just one individual came in, wrote a check to the company for $1.2 million. So that took the treasury from the 2.6, it was at a 3.8. We will need, exploring in the Yukon territory, especially in these fairly remote areas, where you have to use helicopter-supported drilling, is quite expensive. So the plan for the program for the coming year is we will need about $5 million. That's counting on about 10 drill holes of 400 meters into this cliff face where we're getting all these excellent results. If people go to the website of Rackla, you'll get a good presentation there of what it is we're targeting with that investment. I think that most of the money in 2025 will be focused on the Grad property. I've seen nothing quite as exciting as this. We have other targets that need to get worked up, but for the moment, I think the focus of 2025 will be on the Grad. We can't get into the property to work probably until the later weeks of June. So we have a lot of planning to do over the first months of the year. We did complete airborne geophysics and LiDAR surveys after we made this discovery, so we have a lot of data to compile. The LiDAR photogrammetry is excellent. We can see a lot of detail in the mountains in and around. So it's just the Grad property is one large claim block, and within that we've called it the bite zone, BITE, because of the strength of the bismuth and telluride and gold that we're getting from this zone that we've called a bite. As I said earlier, the bismuth and the telluride are important contingents with the gold in these deposits. So we've got bismuth up to 2% and telluride running, 1,000 grams or more in places. So it's very exciting to see the strength. I think that speaks to the strength of this pulse of mineralization that we're seeing on this within the bite zone and within this cliff face. And we also, with the airborne geophysics, have identified 2 or 3 other smaller intrusive bodies that weren't previously mapped in by the government. We haven't worked on those yet, but we think they're from the photogeometry and the airborne geophysics, we can see pretty good alteration in those bodies as well. So I believe we have some other targets within this new Grad property to take a look at. And just on the capital structure, we had 94 million shares out before this investment came in. So Alex purchased 10 million shares. So that will take it to 104 million shares out. And there are about 25 million warrants out from previous financings over the last 2 years. Most of those, though, were quite significantly above the present market price. As I said, we're presently trading around 10 cents. The warrants are at 25 and some are 35. So if we have success in the drill programs in the 2025, those warrants will be exercised and will bring in quite a bit of money for us to continue the drilling on the Grad property.
Simon, thank you for that. So it looks like we can expect some results to flow in by sometime during that third quarter of 2025 is my assumption, based on what you said.
That's right. Based on what we said. And between now and then, there'll be, news basically presenting the project, putting together the data that we've gathered along with the geophysics and the photogeometry, which came in over the last 2 weeks. So we have a lot of compiling to do. We will need to use geologists hanging off the cliff to be sampling on ropes. I mean, it's quite steep, rugged country. Certainly, it's all sticking up out of the ground. So if we do discover a deposit, it'll be very mineable. But the sampling and the drilling of it is challenging and expensive, no doubt.
Simon, and just with that, talk about some of the people that you have there on the ground that are supporting this project, and some of the key people that you think are important to dealing with deposit types, within the gold belt that we're talking about, Tombstone. But just talk a little bit about some of the supporting staff you have.
Right. Well, this Scott Castleman, who's the VPX of the company, has been working in the Yukon for, I think, the last 20 years. He was head of the geological survey of the Yukon for the last 7 years before joining me about 12 months ago. So he's very familiar with how to permit, how to work with the First Nations, how to get things done in the Yukon territory. And then I've got two very excellent young geos that made this discovery for the company, Doug and Armand. They've been with me now. Doug's been probably with me for 8 years. Doug Murray, it's a great geologist. And, he took the first samples on the Bight property, and when I looked where he had to climb to get those samples, it's pretty impressive that he actually got there. So, and that was his first two samples on the property were 95 grams and 15 grams gold. So a great start to this prospect. And since then, as I said, we had that little accident, but otherwise we've probably about 10 man days on the property and just generated every time we take a sample on this cliff face, we get good gold numbers back over channel samples or grab samples. So an exciting prospect for 2025. And we have a lot of other young geos that, they've got you find these by getting boots on the ground. You find these kind of deposits by walking. Nobody's looked inside these intrusive bodies before because they're kind of gray and boring to look at. When these intrusives come in, they alter the sediments all around them very strongly. So you get a lot of very bright gossames and very attractive looking colorations in the, so from flying over the area, you start focusing on the sediments because they're just you get drawn to them by the amount of alteration you see in the sediments. And most of the exploration previously done in this area was done for base metals, lead, zinc, and tungsten, which form skarns in the sediments beside the intrusive. So very, very few people previously have walked inside these large intrusive bodies within this part of the Northwest Territories. So we're working in virgin territory. We need to get boots on the ground and, young, energetic geos climbing the creeks and prospecting the area, just seeing things that have not been seen before.
Simon, so we have a good idea. So on the Grad project here, this is the focus. We'll execute this exploration program in the summer of 2025. Between now and then, you guys will need to raise probably a little bit more money, by my understanding here, to execute that program. Assuming there's success, talk about what you guys would be doing next, assuming there was success by next summer for this project.
We will need to raise probably $2 more million. And so I'll be looking to raise that flow through, either charity flow through or regular flow through probably in February or March of the year, hopefully at better prices than we're presently sitting. If we are successful in the drilling, we just keep drilling. The project, although remote, it's only about 40 kilometers from the North Nahanni Road. There is a road that passes about 40 kilometers from the project itself. It goes to a large Howard's Pass lead zinc deposit that is owned by a Chinese company. That is a pretty well-maintained road. So if we're successful in the drilling, we will start the process trying to get a permit to put a road in. As I mentioned earlier, this area where the Grad property was taken out of a land planning area and determined to be for industrial purposes, which really is mining. That's all there is in this part of the world for industry. So it was opened up for mining. So I think the permitting shouldn't be too complicated. As you see, if you take a look at Snowline's history over the last 3 years, if we're successful in the drill program, if we're successful, and we'll just drill for the next few years to try to drill off a deposit in the multi-million ounce region, because that's what it would need to be to become economic in this location, right? 2 million ounces plus. I think, as I said, Snowline's in 3 years, they've done an amazing job of defining this deposit and growing it by just keep drilling. And we would do something similar to that.
When you look at the Rackla portfolio of projects, and of course with the Grad project here that we're talking about, how do you see that compares? I mean, you guys will continue to be able to raise money in the market. You guys will be able to continue to progress this over time. How do you see it compares? Because you've seen Snowline develop as far as the company events. How do you think this compares? You've looked at the geology of that project. How do you see this?
I would say it's got excellent potential. We have got a great shot at discovering an economic deposit on the Grad property. It's very early stage. There's no drilling in it yet. For me to say it more than that would be overly promotional. I'm excited by what I've seen there. It has never been tested before, never been sampled before. The alteration is extensive within what we can see. It's sticking out of the ground. The valley deposit, which Snowline has drilled up, is sitting in a valley. So the drilling, although they had a little bit of outcrop with visible gold in, and they drilled on that, and they cut. I think the first hole was cut, 100 meters of a gram plus. So they just kept drilling on that, and the deposit grew. It is not sticking out of the ground. Where we are at Grad, it is. So if we can put some holes into it and show the continuity of the mineralization, does it hold together across that whole 500 meters of cliff face so we can see it? In a sense that it could be mined. If so, it's a very exciting target. The other properties we have a lot of area that we need to work on still. There's areas where we see these intrusives and we see geochemistry that we haven't got to. So we will be doing further regional work in 2025. The projects that we worked on previously, the Hit and the Peak, the two areas we drilled, I think we drilled and killed them. When drilling is costing $600 a meter, you really have to make quick decisions. You've got to get in. You like the project, but the drill's not giving you the results you want. You have to stop, otherwise you kill the treasury. There are still targets within those intrusives that need to be looked at yet. Will we get to them in 2025, or maybe if we have good success on the Grad, we would joint venture some of those projects to companies that want to get in the belt, because we have a huge land position. From Snowline's discovery to the east, all the way when the belt crosses into the Northwest Territories, and then it drops north-south, following the edge of the Selwyn Basin. None of that, all the land we have there, a lot of it has never been explored. So there is room for us to form some joint ventures if we're successful on the Grad property and drive that interest, because that'd be the first gold deposit discovered in this part of the Northwest Territories. So it would open up a large area for further exploration.
And just talk just briefly about this. I know the Grad project is the first and foremost focus here for the foreseeable future, but you guys do have quite a few other projects in the portfolio: Astro Complex, Black, RAK Main, Flat, and some others. Are there any plans for those projects that are notable during 2025? Will they be joint ventured? Is that even an option for the company? Will they be monetized? Just talk about some of the plans with these other assets, and if you guys plan to keep those in the portfolio.
Yeah, we certainly do plan to keep them in the portfolio. We did generate anomalies on many of them from the stream sediment programs we did. They do need further work. So the ones that didn't, we let go, or we are in the process of letting some of them go. But yes, we would consider joint ventures with other juniors. And I think that what would drive that is if we were successful in the Grad drilling. It would interest other companies to get involved in this part of the belt where we are, because we have no competition at the present time. So we would certainly consider, and we will put some work in on those other projects. We're putting together the team for the year, and we'll again be employing a number of young geologists that want to get out there and do that hiking, climb up those hills, which are sometimes quite steep, places where nobody's walked before, I presume. So it's quite exciting work for those young geos.
I think overall, we've got a good handle on what the focus is here. This is, certainly high risk exploration work that's happening, and really get down on the ground come summer of 2025 on follow up with the Grad project. Simon, just talk briefly overview of how you see the company strategy going forward here, Simon. Obviously, this is all based on drill bit success, discovery success. Obviously, you've had a background of success of discovery and the group has in the past on other projects and ventures. Give us a little bit of a long-term look at Rackla and what you would like to do with the company, say, over the next 2, 3, 4 years.
My goal would be, as it has been in many of the discoveries I've made before, would be to define it, get a good idea, of the size of it, and sell the company to a producer, because I'm an explorationist, not a miner. And I do think that it'll drive a premium if we're successful on the Grad property or the Ogre to the north of that. Snowline's got a very, very large land position where they're located in the belt, and they've made a great discovery. Sometimes I wonder what they will do with that discovery. They could spin it out and sell that discovery, and continue developing all of the other projects they've got within the belt, and so the shareholders would cash in once and still have the right to continue with the company, so they could get a big success, big win on the Snowline, on the Valley discovery, and still be in the play for further discoveries. And something like that is what I would do if the Grad was a discovery, was to allow the shareholders to monetize that win, and then continue with the play on the other intrusives within the belt that we've got. That would be the ideal scenario for me and for all shareholders.
I think that's clean and clear, and I think our members are pretty well informed of the model at this point, and how you want to approach things going forward here. And hopefully it's in a market condition that's conducive for raising exploration capital to continue work on these projects, and hopefully there's going to be some good discovery success in the future here, Simon, with the company. Just on matters of community work for the company, this is an area that maybe some of our audience isn't as much familiar with, the Yukon area, Northwest Territories, but as you said, some of the areas you're working in are really designated for mineral exploration. But of course, you always have those community issues and things to take care of with community education of the community, which is, in my opinion, severely lacking in a lot of regions around the world. Just good education for community to understand why mining is so important to everything we have and we do. But just talk a little bit about some of the community work the company's doing, and if you see any challenges on the regulatory front going forward, whether it's drill permitting, whether it's developing a project into a mine, which obviously won't be your problem, but nonetheless, the groundwork is important. Just talk a little bit about community and how you see that.
Yeah, well, we work closely with this. I mean, it's a long way to many communities from where we're working, but we do work closely with the First Nations in the area. I've got a number of people in the company that work in ESG and spend quite a bit of time going to visit in Toledo, the towns the small towns in the Northwest Territories that do have surface rights in the areas where we are. So we try to bring in employment and do some scholarships, spend quite a bit of time visiting the towns and introducing the project and what the step-by-step process of exploration, how it goes, how it works. So it's an important part of what we do in mineral exploration anywhere in the world. I think I've spent a lot of time working in Latin America, as you know, and it's important to involve the communities where you are. It's very important. Otherwise, you run into big roadblocks that just prevent development. I spent a lot of time over the years in Guatemala, and I've had quite a bit of success down there. And we work closely with the towns where it was located. So that deposit now, I think I discovered it in 1998, and it's still sitting there unmined at 3.5 million ounces. A very attractive deposit.
Well, Simon, thank you for that. A lot of these jurisdictions, as you well know, are difficult. Canada has its problems in different ways, from a social acceptance standpoint, social license, and then also countries like Guatemala, as you highlighted, have another set of different challenges. You and I have both seen both sides of this. The challenges in Canada could be just as bad as the challenges in a developing country that maybe doesn't have as much mining experience. So it boils down to how you handle folks in the country, and some jurisdictions are just flat out difficult, even if you do a fantastic job, as we've seen as well. So I appreciate your comments on that, and hopefully there's some success in seeing some of those deposits finally see the light of day and create wealth and jobs and education for the local communities in the country, as well as, of course, the company who has put all the work forward to bring that out of the ground. So, well, Simon, Short of any other comments, I'd like to leave it there for now. And of course, any comments to wrap up on your side. But I'll leave you with this question for potential investors who are listening in. The company has a market capitalization today of about 9 million Canadian dollars. Why should Rackla Metals be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors portfolio at this stage?
I think just the excitement of the Grad discovery. I think if we're successful in the drill program in 2025, then the upside is very significant. And if we're not, then the downside isn't quite as bad, because I've been able to keep companies financed and active for the last 20 years, and I'll be able to keep Rackla active. Even if we should miss on the Grad, there will be another project found in the belt that we can finance on and keep the company going. Take a look at Rackla Metals Inc., the website, racklametals.com, and look at the presentation on the Grad property and get a feel for the excitement of this discovery. Look forward to July when we'll be drilling it.
And Simon, what is the best way for interested folks to reach out to the company?
Call me, 604-375-8119. It's my cell number. Always happy to talk about what I'm doing.
Simon, thank you for that. And hey, look, really appreciate you giving us an introduction to Rackla. Hopefully you'll come back to update in the coming months and certainly as the company gets underway next year. Best of luck, of course, coming up, and we look forward to having you back.
Well, thanks for inviting me to come and talk about Rackla, and I look forward to coming back. Hopefully we'll be talking again in August when we've got the drill turning on the property, Andrew.